Smart aesthetics, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship.
Greetings and welcome back to part 4 of building your brag-worthy brand empire. My goodness, I can't believe I've recorded all of these in the same time. That's why I'm still in the same outfit if you're watching on YouTube. But nonetheless, this was something that I wanted to share with you guys because I think that the value of this presentation is going to be useful regardless of where you're at in the branding process, whether you're in a audit phase of looking at everything or in a rebrand phase, or even you're at the beginning of your business. These should all be tips, hopefully, that you can take away from the episode and really begin to implement. If you have not yet listened to part 1, part 2, or part 3, either on anywhere you listen to podcasts or watch them on YouTube, I would recommend you do that first because the chapter that we're covering today is going to be a little bit more elevated, more expert level, more advanced than the beginning, laying the foundations. So first and foremost, we said we're going to define the brand. We're going to lay to the foundations of the brand. Then we're going to get into solidifying the aesthetics, making sure that you have a brand look, you have branding that fits. Then we talked about really getting into the content of it all and solidifying the aesthetic and the tone of the business in message, in sound, and in visuals. And lastly, what I'm going to cover, the last 2 sections, which are the shortest sections, which will be great, is actually conquering the online space. Now, I know that brands exist more than just online, as you do as well. But really, my expertise and knowledge comes in helping online entrepreneurs. So people who are selling a product or a service online. They are reaching their ideal client online. They are communicating their vision and values online. And they're going to use social media mostly, as well as their own presence, brand presence, to get those clients in the door. So this section is really called Conquering the Online Space. And I'm going to kind of go through some of my pet peeves when it comes to brands that have done the work and then fell off. They fell short. They couldn't take it all the way. And the difference for me is really figuring out how you take that branding that we worked so hard on, that you invested money in, and you assign the aesthetics, you have the tone nailed down, but how do you actually take that and implement it in a brand that like lives and breathes the values and is sustaining? So first and foremost, social media, because that's, again, my area of expertise here. Regardless of the platform that you're on, please, for the love of God, maintain a consistent brand look and feel. The reason you want to maintain consistency is because you don't want to confuse your audience, shatter your credibility, or become forgettable. I find that a lot of times online entrepreneurs get shiny object syndrome and they ping pong around a whole bunch of different brand aesthetics and a whole bunch of different things. And then they change their mind and then they have this font on this thing and a different font on their web, craziness, right? The reason that we want to show up consistently is because it gives us trust and credibility from our audience. So my signature brand color is yellow. That is the color of my brand. Anytime I do a presentation, guess what? It's gonna be yellow. Even if it doesn't have my logo on it, it's gonna be yellow. If I do a piece of merch, it's gonna be yellow because that's the consistency that I'm creating with my brand so that when you see yellow, you think of me. That is very intentional. So you don't want to confuse your audience. You don't want to shatter your credibility by changing your look 100 million times. And you don't want to become forgettable because we associate this scatterbrained kind of branding with someone who doesn't really know who they are. So a good analogy that I kind of, or story that I tell of this is like, imagine you're in high school and you go and sit next to a new classmate and the first day you show up to school and they're dressed super preppy. You're like, oh, okay, nice, like preppy person, whatever. The next day they're dressed super goth. And then the next day they're dressed super feminine. And then the next day they're dressed super sporty. And you're like, I don't know how to relate to you because I don't know what you're communicating here. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk to you about sports or Lana Del Rey. Like, can't figure it out. So if you show up consistently, you're at least cementing some part of your brand that says, hey, if you're into this, so are we. And you're creating that opportunity for someone to create the connection point with you where otherwise they may not have. And even more to that point, if you change it all the time, you may cause a lot of distrust with your audience because they're like, I really don't know how to talk to you or how to relate to you. I really don't know how to even think that we would have anything in common if you're switching it up constantly. So we want to go for consistency. That doesn't mean you can't experiment. That doesn't mean you can't step outside of your style every once in a while, but come back to a center, come back to a core that's consistent. Same with the restaurant analogy, right? We use this in the prior part to this series, is if we are stocking your kitchen with ingredients, your branding elements being all of the ingredients of the kitchen, we don't want to serve up all of a sudden a dish that's a totally different cuisine than what your audience is used to. A fusion dish, sure. Yeah, you want to throw in a few different spices, experiment with a different ingredient every once in a while, but like come back to the classics, come back to the core, and come back to what people can expect from you, and you're going to have happier customers, right? The next is you want to make sure that you're posting consistently and you're posting high value. I know this is a tall order, right? But the reason we want to post consistently and we want to post high value content is because we don't want to lose potential new clients and we don't want to become a sales page. I think a lot of new business owners, they get their new branding, they get their new photography, and then every single post becomes about asking for the sale and not about building community, which is way more important because, as we like to say, retention is way less expensive than recruitment. It is much easier to keep someone who's already used your product or service and keep them happy than it is to constantly be chasing down new business. So if we can continue to educate and continue to provide value and continue to create community for someone who likes being in your universe, those new clients are gonna come naturally. Because if you do a great job for someone and they stick around, they're going to be way more inclined to refer you than if you do a great job and drop off the face of the earth. Or if you do a great job and then you do a great job for them and then they go on your socials and you're immediately trying to sell it to the next person. Instead, grow with that client, grow with that person by continuing to add value to their brand. One of the ways that I do that is the podcast. You're right here. This is exactly what I'm talking about, is consistently showing up so that once a week there is a new episode for my audience of designers and my audience of potential clients to come back to and learn every single week. Consistency and high value. And lastly, engagement. We want to make sure that we're engaging with our audiences. This is another like pet peeve of mine, is someone who just uses their social media as an advertising platform and not as a chance to grow community, so that when people ask you questions or send you messages that you're actually responding. The reason that you would want to do this is so that you don't distance yourself from your community or become out of touch or miss opportunities, right? There still needs to be that connection point to your audience to be able to grow this brand into something that becomes your brand empire, your brand legacy. Additionally, a social media posting strategy is not a content strategy. Those are two different things. So Taylor Loren on Threads got into a nice, big, juicy internet fight about this with one of the bro marketing pages that basically said, our content strategy is 6 times a day video, 2 times a day post, 8 times a day story. She's like, this is a posting schedule. This isn't a content strategy. A content strategy is actually creating a tactical plan for the content. So creating the actual content itself based on what's performing well, based on what's building trust, based on what's providing value. The management is where the posting strategy comes in. So that's where the actual when and how of where you're sharing the content comes into play. This platform, this type of media, this many times, yada, yada. That's more like the measuring cups, right? The knives, the measuring cups, the cutting boards. It's not the food. It's not the food. So what we need to figure out is the food part of it, the meat of it. So the creation of the content strategy is coming from what pieces are you creating to connect to that audience? Is it an interview? Is it an infographic? Is it a carousel? Is it a video? Is it a time lapse, right? That's the content part of it. And then lastly, there's like what I'm calling like governance of the content that makes this trifecta of actual content strategy: creation, management, and governance. The governance of the content is like overseeing it, making sure that the account is running well, making sure the questions are being responded to, making sure that there's an engagement, there's conversation happening back and forth, that you are showing up on social media the way that you want people to show up with you. I think that's a big missed step. It's like, oh, well, I made this post and nobody interacted. How long did you spend interacting with other people's posts? How long did you spend responding to other people's stories or leaving them a message or connecting with them or following them or binge liking all of their stuff? It is reciprocal. And that's why it's social media and not just media, because there's a social aspect to that. And I think that gets really overlooked. The other thing is, when you look at this content strategy, especially if you're looking at the slide on YouTube, this 3-part creation, management, governance is something you can get help with, right? So you can outsource different steps of this as you scale. If you go back and listen to my 10 lessons I learned from 10 years in business, I talked about how impactful it was for me to hire people that liked doing the things that I didn't like to do. If you don't like creating content, hire someone to help you with content. If you don't like managing your content, hire someone to help you manage the content, to help create the posting strategy. If you don't like governing the content and interacting with the community, hire a community manager. These roles exist, right? But it's still my suggestion that you, the business owner, the founder, the breadwinner of the company, that you stay plugged into one of these three things. Sometimes you'll do all three, but as you grow, I still think it's important to stay plugged into one of these three things. It's probably going to be creation of the content. So maybe you'll have a podcast or a web show or be a public speaker. Maybe you'll write posts on LinkedIn. Maybe you'll create the bulk copy to then hand off to your marketing team. It's still important to stay plugged into one of these three. One of the ways you can do that is building trust with thought leadership. So the better you get at your business, the more experience you have. The more experience you have is the more knowledge that you can share. So the ways we can do this are educating rather than selling, using data and research, and being transparent and authentic. Kills me that I have to say be transparent and authentic, but nonetheless, we're here. I would hope that everyone is being transparent and authentic. But the way that we can do this in a thought leadership kind of way is about being open about your challenges, being open about your failures, admitting when you were wrong, right? Changing your mind or doubling down on something, like saying, no, this is really actually what I believe, and this is actually what I want to move forward. And the way that we do that is that when you put that in, what you're getting out of it is that people are learning from your trial and error. They're trusting you more because they've seen you fall and they're like, ooh, yeah, I'm not going to go on that path. If you're telling me, if you went this way and you slip, but you're telling me there's another path with a handrail and I'm not going to slip, I'm going to listen to you because I saw you fall and I'm going to take your way up the stairs, right? So you kind of become proof in the pudding. So by being transparent and being authentic and showing your own transformation, other people can learn from your trial and error. When you use data and research, when you put in the time to use data and research, you can take on changes in your industry and become the kind of thought leader of that space. So for example, when I recorded the episode about Bumble's rebrand and in my opinion, it being a fail, I got reached out to as an expert for an article from Wall Street Journal because I stuck my neck out. And I said, as someone who's in branding and uses Bumble, this is why I think this was a flop. So when you do that, you then become a go-to resource for a curious audience. When you can cement yourself in your own thought leadership and your own experience as being something that is worth listening to, right? Build trust because you have experience and you're able to talk on these subjects because you're the subject matter expert, then people will keep coming back to you when they want that kind of information again. So another example of this is every year in December, I publish a trend report. And the trend report has been great because it shows people not only that I'm paying attention to things coming down the pipeline, I can serve them better as my clients, but then it becomes something that my audience starts to expect. And then that builds trust and thought leadership, right? Because then when those trends come to fruition, they're like, oh my gosh, you called it. You totally called it. That's kind of the moment that we're looking for. When you educate rather than sell, when you're putting into it is actionable insights regardless of making the sale. So creating that high quality content. So you're sharing something with someone that they didn't have to necessarily pay for, but they're still learning from you in a way. So they're still gaining something. And when you do that, what you get out of it is you're positioning again your brand as a helpful resource. So you're becoming a go-to resource, you're becoming helpful, people are learning from your own trial and error. And all of this is what's contributing to building thought leadership within your content. Thought leadership in the online space and thought leadership coming from your brand. People will start to associate what you think and how you think and what you share with the success of your company. You can also build trust with social proof. And this is where the engagement comes into play, right? The audience and the community building comes into play. Sharing customer success stories builds social currency. And social currency are those real world examples that show how you do what you do. And they don't just talk the talk, but they actually walk the walk. This builds so much confidence in your brand because the association on the other side of the screen is that, wow, if you can do that for them, what can you do for me? If you can do brand design in 60 seconds and you took this horrible looking logo and you made it look awesome, what can you do for me? Because my logo looks bad and now I want a new logo. And I trust that you can make it look awesome because other people gave you their money and trusted you to do it. And wait a second, you've done it 86 times and I can go on your TikTok and scroll 86 times and find brand design in 60 seconds seconds videos. That's what I'm talking about. So building the social proof with those customer success stories with client case studies is huge because it helps to kind of like quell any hesitations from someone who maybe is on the fence of working with you or hiring your company. Written testimonials, podcast testimonials, case studies, surveys, statistics all help you build social proof and build trust. I also love like screenshot. Like I love a screenshot. We love like a text message screenshot that is like a behind the scenes kind of feeling, right? That shows the social proof, shows somebody getting excited, shows that someone else is buying into the social cachet of your company. And I think those go really far. It's also something that I think a lot of creators overlook in the beginning because sometimes like the written testimonial screenshot Instagram post gets low engagement because people don't read them, right? Like I'm not sitting there reading a testimonial unless I think I might want to hire your company. So that's the other thing is I think there's content that you can make for your brand that serves the purpose of like not getting high likes or high engagement, but is something that's not for the person that just happens across it in their feed. It's for the person that's coming to shop your brand. They're coming to get information. They're coming to browse. So even if you're posting something and it maybe flops by your definition, doesn't get high likes, doesn't get high views, it may just be that the person who needed to see it hasn't seen it yet. And that they might in the future. They might come across your Instagram page, they might come across your TikTok, they might come across one of your socials and then deep dive on those testimonials and really read the words and listen to what people are saying. I think this is another reason why the podcast has been so successful for us. So once we finish projects with clients, we'll have the client on to talk about the project. And then that becomes the long form testimonial of what it was like to work with them. It exposes new people to their audience. They get a win out of it. We get a win out of it because we say like, what was the branding process like for you? What are the things that came up that you weren't aware of? How do you feel like your new branding represents what you're trying to do here? And those are some of my favorite episodes as well. Making sure that you're using them in multiple places, again, helps to build that social proof too. So we will like embed the podcast episode on our portfolio page. That'll also have video, talk about sound, multi-sensory, multi-content. Our portfolio pages are a great example of this. Not only are you seeing the branding, but you're hearing the podcast episode and you're watching the video presentation of the brand go down. So those might be some tips for you in your portfolio pages. Brand trust also comes with strategic collaborations and partnerships. So this would kind of be like a 301 version because first we have to establish your thought leadership, then get the social proof, then collaborations and partnerships. Collabs are great for expanding your reach and your audience. So for example, like a fitness professional that partners with like a well-known fitness apparel brand or enhancing your credibility where you can mutually benefit from the reputation of your partner. So if you're punching up, right, and you're collaborating with someone who's more advanced than you, it can help enhance your own credibility or your own trustworthiness because people will start to associate their brand, their success with your brand and your success. And it also allows you to combine expertise. So you can create a more holistic offering. You can serve your clients better when you have those strategic partnerships in place that say, hey, I don't do this, but I would really recommend that you work with so-and-so for XYZ. It just helps build your audience by adding more experts to your lineup. The last chunk in the last few minutes of this episode of this presentation is about codifying your brand legacy. So now we've done the work. We've defined, we've narrowed in on the visuals, solidified the visuals. We've crafted the aesthetic and tone. We've conquered online space by building credibility. And now we get to codify the brand legacy. And this is like an ongoing thing. This isn't just like a one-stop shop, like, oh, done. We're like, check, I have a legacy now. Like this is an ongoing work. And the way that I laid this out for the purpose of this presentation is your brand evolution. So how your brand changes over time and evolves over time, and that it's kind of a teeter-totter, unfortunately. So the tricky part of this is it's kind of between these two personas. And for the purpose of this Roman Empire themed presentation, I have between the Stoic and the warrior. This is like bullish and bear. This is a lot of, again, spectrums, teeter-totters, whatever you want to call it. Here I've even shown it as a Venn diagram, which a Stoic, someone who's in like a Stoic phase of their brand, is more concerned with staying rooted in the core of the brand. So you're centered, you're independent, you're being steady, you're consistent, you're reliable, and you're focused, right? So that's really the Stoic. That's like someone who's like, I know exactly who I am. I know what I have to offer. Like it or not, this is what it is. And you're just kind of concrete in that. The other end of the teeter-totter is what I'm calling more of like the warrior persona, which is someone who's fearless, risky, brave, nimble, flexible, they're modern, they're up to date, they're pushing the boundaries, they're remaining agile to the market and agile to their community and what they want. So that agility versus the stoicism kind of gives you this, again, teeter-totter of two different approaches with your legacy, right? Are you going to be the brand that is constantly pushing boundaries and is constantly showing up and constantly being brave? Or are you going to be the brand that you're like, we know exactly who we are and we are here to stay? Both have pros, both have cons. For me, sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. We have some things that we do consistently, and we always do consistently. Then we have some things that we take risks on. We have some things that we try. We have some things that might be a huge success, might be a total flop, right? And that would be more of that like warrior persona that's like, I'm going to just go for it and see what happens. And it might be dangerous and it might be scary, but it might also be awesome. So within this brand evolution, as you're continuing to grow as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're trying to find that sweet spot between staying rooted in your brand, staying true to your values, staying true to your mission and your vision and your services and your clients and everything like that, and also being flexible enough to change every once in a while and to listen and to be adaptable and to be flexible. And that's really where the magic happens, is when you can find the right time to be either one of those qualities. Lastly, I'll kind of tie this up in a nice bow with a really great brand evolution testimonial. This is the social proof that I was talking about from Ruben. So thank you, Ruben, for having me again for Fit Boss Weekend, about what it was like to work with us for branding. So he said that there's a polish that I was looking for to take it to the next level and stand out a bit more. I believe that I really needed that for my business. Being slightly elevated from the normal helped my brand feel more established and more concrete, which is a lovely way of wrapping everything in together to basically say that your brand investments can help make a huge impact on how you show up as a brand. That shouldn't be like a surprise to anyone necessarily, but the way that you can think about your branding, your marketing, your services, your offerings can help make that experience of being present and being a business owner that much more enjoyable, right? So when we're thinking about that in the context of branding, what I want you to consider is that the investment that you make should be proportionate to the amount of impact that you want to have. If you want to have huge, lasting, global impact, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive. If you want to say like, I want to make an impact for these people, these 5 people in my circle right here, it may be less expensive. But wherever you fall in that spectrum, hiring the people that know how to do the things that you don't know how to do is huge. Hiring the people that do the things that you hate doing is huge. And really taking time to reflect and measure how you want to show up is going to be really big in cementing your brand and building this brand empire that we're talking about, right? And to pull it all back to the beginning, the brand empire is nothing more than building the type of business that supports the lifestyle that you want, that can support also multiple people, multiple clients, multiple offerings all at once. Because in 2024 and into 2025 and so forth, that's kind of how business is going. I hope you enjoyed this. I really had a great time recording it and recapping it for you. It was such a great presentation to give in person. If you have a group, a mentor group, a school, a program, and anything that wants me to come in as a public speaker, I am more than available to make that happen. I actually really love this kind of stuff. It's a nice way to summarize all the conversations I've been having with clients and behind the scenes and with friends and colleagues into a message that I think you can really take away and take action on. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave your questions, comments. If you are listening as a podcast, please share with a friend. We would love that. Share to your stories. Shoot me a DM. Thanks so much for listening. I know this was a doozy. This is a 4-part series. I can't believe we spent 4 parts talking about all of this, but very, very worth it. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.